this session onward, we are going to discuss very crucial, very important aspect of the graph of economy. This discussion is centered around 2 points. One is called ideal point of balance, and another point is called actual point of balance. Ideal point always is at the center of the sphere of economy. Why it is in the center of the sphere of the economy is because of the very simple fact that from the center, the distances from center to the outer circle of the sphere is same. You take it 30 360 degree, the distance will always remain same in case of a perfect sphere. And the ideal shape of economy we have discussed before, that why it should be a sphere, though in practical situation a perfect sphere is not possible, but then efforts can always be made to bring it closer to the ideal shape, that is the perfect sphere. And we have already discussed that in perfect sphere only a perfect square, that is the square of stability of the economy, can exist. In fact, all the geometrical patterns emerge within the square of the economy, and all the analysis of different geometrical shapes is always compared with the ideal square of the economy. We have already discussed that when we divide the square in vertical lines, we have a demand volume and supply atmosphere, and when we divide the square in horizontal line, it is we get two rectangles of physical stability and monetary stability. We have already discussed that when we divide the sphere in four perfect triangles, we get the triangles of stability of demand volume and supply atmosphere. Similarly, triangle of physical stability and triangle of monetary stability. The center point of all these divisions of the sphere of economy as well as square of economy, there is a one point where the horizontal and vertical as well as the cross section, that is, if you draw a line from income to production and another line if you draw from pole of consumption to expenditure, the point where they intersect each other is the point what we call is the ideal point of stability, or this is the point where from where the deviations, because ideal point is one which is ideal in any case. In any case means it is a dream point where the management of economy has to be focused. The actual point of stability can always be different from the ideal point. But how much different it is, how much distance it has already traveled from ideal point, the distance or the deviation is mathematically calculated to denote that how much we are away from the ideal status. The distortion will cause different emerging geometrical patterns which we discussed earlier, that vertical division and horizontal division, and then four squares of economy and triangles of economy, the variation in all these patterns can always be correlated, that how much they are different from the ideal shape. In fact, it has been mentioned in the book also that it is an overlay over the ideal shape of economy. Actual economy is overlaid, means it is always compared. Actual square of the economy as well as the sphere of the economy is always comparatively analyzed with the ideal shape, so that the analysis becomes very clear. Anybody can watch the graph of actual status and how much it has deviated from the ideal status. The comparison becomes very easy to even a layman, that the management should now be focused to strengthen the areas where the weakness is always in relative reduction in the area of geometrical patterns that we have discussed, that the within the square of economy, how many variations can take place, and each variation has a logical economic meaning, and this meaning is immediately converted mathematically, that how much deviation has already taken place, and where now the monetary forces need to be strengthened. In fact, the management of the economy is always on monetary side, because the regulators like the central bank and the central government always they make an attempt to correct the economy by regulating the monetary forces. Monetary forces means the currency in circulation by means of deficit financing, or by activity of disbursement of loan, and inviting the foreign investment. All these measures are directed to regulate the monetary forces, because by manipulating the monetary forces only, the physical forces of consumption and production can be increased. The attempt is always there to improve the economy by increasing the consumption within the economy and more production within the economy. So the regulatory part is always there on the monetary forces of expenditure. Government can only interfere by infusing more currency through its monetary disciplinary bodies like RBI and other banks, that by repo rate, and within how much interest should be charged on capital loans, personal loan, etc. So all the efforts by the government as well as by a monetary institution, central monetary institution, is by infusing or reducing. If there is too much loan, too much of inflation in the economy, then the central government will try to reduce the liquidity available with the market, because more money means more demand for consumption. And if the supply is not there, it means the prices will increase, and it is called the inflation. If it is causing too much of pain to the people, then the government will decide that the money in circulation, the liquidity available within the economy should be reduced so that demand push is not there by monetary forces. Similarly, the deflation also just adverse to it, and it has an adverse effect. And every student of economics know that what the inflation causes and what the deflation causes. But nowadays, it has become a kind of a fashion that if the deficit financing can push the growth of the economy, then within certain limits, inflation can be given a free hand, and government is allowed to fix a monetary limit within which the deficit financing is permissible by the act of parliament or by self measures of discipline also. So the expenditure code of the sphere and the square of the economy is of critical importance because it is from where the government regulates the monetary flow of the economy, and the attempt is always to increase the income. Income, once again, has many variables like salary, wages, the profit, and so on and so forth. But there's a always element of credit also. For the sake of consumption, the loan is also used. Now, these are the variables. Similarly, saving. Saving has also a very needs to be analyzed very precisely because if the total income we consider that it will be used for consumption, it it is always not possible. There's a sizable population who defers payment by way of making a saving. He saves his income by minimizing the consumption, by controlling the consumption. So the difference between the income and consumption is that results in saving. Saving means it can be used for rainy days as well as for constructing a house at a later stage, buying a car, automobile at a later stage. It can be also used for the purpose of education of his children, and similarly for arranging a marriage for their son or daughter, as the case may be. For different future demands, this saving can be utilized. So far, so good. If the saving is consumed not today but tomorrow for all these purposes which I have already discussed, just elaborated to you, that is a so far so good. But if it is these expenditures are met from borrowing maybe from relatives, friends, but these days the banks, financial institutions are providing different type of loans for education, for constructing a house, for buying a automobile, and so on, so forth. So one needs to consider that what kind of monetary flow is there in the pole of income, because regular income it's all right. If the expenditure is met from saving, it is all right. But when the banks give the loan for consumption purposes, then the question becomes that from the income, the future repayment is a liability, and a liability that has to be met from the existing sources. If I take a loan for buying a car, immediately my EMI will start. My EMI will cause money available to me will not be there for use of consumption. This because I have created a liability by taking a loan, and now I have to repay the loan from whatever earning I am making today. It means the income has to be reduced by the amount of repayment liability. So, this is the basic difference. These are the different variables when we calculate the income part of it. Similarly, if we take the consumption, if the consumption is for the wasteful expenditure, just a revenue expenditure, it has to be treated differently. And if I create a asset out of it, like if I construct a house, now the ownership of the house will definitely in the future will fetch a higher rate because of the inflation. The property which I bought 15 years before or 20 years before or 25 years before will definitely have a more market value in command. It means the national asset is increasing. You got to understand the difference between consumption is always there. But if the consumption is taking my money out to create a asset, it has a different meaning in the economics, and revenue expenditure if I am making, it has a different meaning in the economy. Similarly, in the production causes expenditure to grow. It is a common logic. We have discussed the common logic part of it, that the production, if there is an increased production, more expenditure will take place. But there is also expenditure difference. Revenue expenditure on the production side and capital expenditure. If it is a capital expenditure, the expenditure will take place, but the return from that investment will come as the revenue will start flowing in after some time. What we call is the gestation period. For every asset, there is a gestation period. Some assets creation is for the gestation period may be short, but in many cases, the gestation period is a pretty long time. 5 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. It may be differently what kind of assets we are going to create. Just like for the sake of, if we want to construct a dam, irrigation dam, in that case, the construction of dam takes a pretty long time, maybe 6 years, 7 years, or in some cases, decades also. After 10 years, if the usefulness of the irrigation projects, they will start yielding income after 10 years only. So till then, that investment, that the creation of asset will not immediately generate the income for the beneficiary section of the economy. They will have to wait for that time. Therefore, these kind of expenditures, these type of capital expenditures, has a long period of gestation, will have to be treated differently, because the expenditure on this account will not immediately transform as income in the demand value. It will take a pretty long time to this monetary circulation to start flowing, but this will start flowing once it start flowing. The It is a recurring kind of expenditure. Without that, you don't have to make expenditure. Once you create a dam, irrigation dam, and water is start using for the irrigation project by the farmers, farmers will keep on reaping the profit. They will keep on earning the profit from the irrigation project for a very long period of time, and for that government will not have to incur any further expenditure other than the maintenance part of it. Maintenance is always a revenue expenditure, because it is always required to keep the capital assets financially viable, to remain financially viable. But it is a comparatively, the expenditure is very it is insignificant compared to the overall total cost of project. So this is the basic limitations, and when we calculate the deviation of actual point of balance from the ideal point of balance, we have to keep these reservations which I have just discussed, that when we calculate the income, because the input of data has to be taken into consideration when the formulas are formed. The data of income will have to be compiled first. Only then any interpretation can be drawn. So this is a preparatory stage of drawing the shape of the economy. In other words, we call it graph of the economy. Graph is always drawn to calculate the area of any geometrical object. Therefore, from the beginning, am insisting that it is a graph. It's a simple graph to illustrate the forces of interplay between the fundamental economic forces of income, consumption, production, and expenditure. Now, what deviations can be seen and analyzed? Discussion on this we will start once we complete, because what is the actual point of balance and what is the deviation from the ideal point of balance, it has to be seen from the graph, that how it moves away from when the economy grows, or when the monetary forces cause it to, or the market forces cause it to decrease, because it is not always possible to keep on going, keep on going. We cannot imagine a situation where all the time growth will take place. Sometimes there is a stoppage. We have to cut down, we have to stabilize first and then move ahead. So, this is the status of presentation on these 2 points, which I very initially I told you, that it's very critical to understand what the ideal point of stability and what is the actual point of discussing of economy. It has to be understood first. Only then further elaborations will be easy for you to understand. So, dear students, dear friends, till then, I take your permission and invite you for the next lecture. Thanks.